Hi, everybody. Welcome to the How to Not Get Stuck workshop. I am therapist and relationship coach Micah Ross, and welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Don't let the PowerPoint scare you. It is mostly just to keep me on track and to give you something fun to look at. So this is not going to be too stuffy. I'm going to be throwing my own relationship under the bus. Hopefully it's entertaining and insightful, and you're going to leave with loads of what to do next, what to say next in tough conversations. So you are in the right place. If you have a feeling that your marriage or another important relationship in your life should feel better than it does, but it doesn't, and you can't figure out what to do next. You feel like something is off, but your partner thinks it's fine. That's super common. I work with lots of couples in my practice, and your relationship is only as healthy as the least happy partner. You feel like you have the same arguments over and over, or they're ridiculous. I hear people say, like, we're having the same stupid fights over and over again on repeat. It's a good sign that you should be here or that you're going to get something out of it. I didn't mean to shit on you. You can feel that you're slowly growing apart and you don't want to, and you can't figure out how to get off that slippery slope. You've tried self-help books and or counseling. I have clients say all the time. I have a client who I'm thinking about, she's in Nashville, said, I read every self-help book under the sun and nothing has stuck like what Micah presents in her workshops. You miss your best friend. I hear people say that a lot when their relationship with their spouse isn't in a great place. They miss their best friend. There's a lot of unresolved issues getting in the way. You would love a system that gets you real results. And this one's not on here. You don't mind a curse word or two. It's just what's going to happen. It's almost guaranteed. But I'm giving you a warning. So here's me when I was in first grade. I'm probably about 6 at the time, around the first time that my mom filed for divorce. She filed again when I was 11 and divorced in October of my 7th grade year. I was 12. Which was a fantastic time to move to another state. That is deep sarcasm, if you couldn't tell. So I did not come from a beaver cleaver family. My parents' marriage was highly conflictual. They both have been married 3 times. So it was very super duper clear to me when I was in early adolescence. I mean, even from the time when I was 6, I knew that my parents' marriage wasn't great. But all of this, I feel like, was a gift because I was very clear that I probably didn't have great examples in terms of what it takes to create healthy relationships and or a happy, healthy family. And when I was a teen, I started devouring relational, spiritual, and psychological texts and kind of couldn't get enough, and I still can't. Participated in my own therapy for years with an amazing mentor, went on to get many letters after my name. I have taught at multiple universities. I have loads of extra on top of all that certifications. I'm a Gottman certified therapist, which is a big deal in couples counseling. I have I can't say successful, but I have a successful practice with a 6-month plus wait list here in St. Louis, Missouri, but I work with people all over the world. So all of that to say, like, if you don't know me, I think it's important you know a little bit about who I am, so there's weight to what I say. Here's a little bit more about kind of my personal life. Up on the top left is my husband, Eric, from Ottumwa, Iowa. And that's us on our wedding day. He owns an apparel company, sports apparel, and they give back quite a bit. And this is them presenting a large, like, Price is Right sized check to the Jason Mott Foundation for Cancer Research. My dog, Cowboy, he is the most wildly therapeutic, not certified therapy dog. And he comes to work with me, and his floof is floofy. These are my 3 kids. These pictures are from years ago because the 2 oldest want nothing to do with my social media and or internet presence, which is their choice and is totally fine. And I understand. I talk about some things like sex at times on the internet, and they find it all just totally cringy. So I get thank you notes and testimonials from clients all the time. And I've put some up on the screen But the compliments that I take the most seriously are the ones that I receive from my husband, because all I ever wanted was a happy and healthy family. And years ago, when I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a nursing baby, we had sat down to a very not spectacular dinner that I had made, and he said, "Thank you." And I was really confused. And I was like, for what? I thought, he cannot be thanking me for this random Trader Joe's sausage, frozen vegetable dinner fit for a toddler. And he said, for helping me be the person I always wanted to be. Tears welled up in my eyes. I had been so busy in my life and in my relationships, focused on my part, on my growth, on what I could do differently, that I hadn't realized the impact that it had had on him. And I tell this story because he gets asked quite a bit, "Ooh, what's it like to be married to a marriage therapist?" And he always has a very sincere and complimentary answer. And I say all this because I think that it highlights the fact that I deeply understand that if I were to come home and teach him a lesson about how he wasn't communicating with me right, I would then be focused on his part of the problem. And as long as I'm focused on the other person's part of the problem, I am not solution focused. We are going to, in this workshop, talk about 2 parts in an interaction that gets stuck or doesn't go well. And I want you focusing on your part of that interaction. It's where all of your power lies to create change. It could change everybody in your family in a much more sustainable, long-term, powerful way than direct attempts at change, which can easily be perceived as criticism. So we're going to talk about that a lot, the attack-defense cycle. So I understand that you might be really busy. A lot of the people that I work with are very busy, and I've created some very comprehensive programs that work with people's busy schedule. So I understand busyness. I just said I had a 5, 3, and 0-year-old at one time. I have a very successful, business that I'm running, and you don't have time to not create great relationships. They are the most important factor in terms of what creates happiness. So says an 85-year longitudinal study from Harvard. So you can't argue with that. We're not going to do it, okay? So communication is essential for all relationships, whether we're talking about work, relationships with your kids, with your extended family, with your spouse, with yourself, okay? The do's and don'ts of relationships with others also apply to the ones that we have with ourselves. If you have questions, there should be a little orange Ask Us button, or you can shoot me a DM or an email. Let's get started. So if you stay till the end, we're going to cover a little bit of the conflict map, and you will get your very own copy of the conflict map, which I created years ago in response to clients constantly asking me, "Hey, wait, how do you know how to do that? How do you know what to say next? How do you know what to do next?" It took a lot of brain power, and trust me, it's worth sticking around. First, we're going to start with what research says does not work in our relationships. What has been proven to be relationally damaging? Dr. John Gottman, the leading researcher on relationships in our country, I can't say our country because you could be watching this from anywhere, in the United States, is able to predict divorce with up to a 93% success rate by coding 4 things: criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt. The first 2 we're going to dive deep into: criticism and defensiveness. Stonewalling is shutting somebody out or refusing to speak to or interact with them from a punishing place or a screw you, F you place. Contempt is what happens over a long period of time of criticism and defensiveness, where that attack-defense cycle is damaging the relationship, and rose-colored glasses start to fade and poop-colored lenses appear where the rose-colored glasses once were. Respect starts to be hard to come by. It is hard to give the other person the benefit of the doubt. We are quick to react with blame and criticism, quick to defend. It's just easier for miscommunications to happen and for things to get ugly. So let's start where it all starts, with criticism and defensiveness. Now, I put a word in front of criticism: perceived criticism and defensiveness, and that's important. So we're going to define these terms into the ground, okay? So criticism at its core is communicating to somebody that they're not doing something right or they're not doing something enough. But I think it's important to be very clear about all of the things underneath this huge umbrella of criticism. So superiority, or coming to an interaction from a place of superiority, or with an I'm right, you're wrong, I'm smart, you're stupid, I'm sane, you're crazy intent, right? Some people, like, that can be perceived and it can elicit defensiveness, and sometimes it's meant and sometimes it's not. You might call this condescending in your relationship, right? So my family of origin could do this with a question like, who cut these onions? Like, they could be calling you an idiot without actually calling you an idiot. And then if you had an issue with that, they would say, what? I was just asking a question. I mean, they were good at being critical in a very under the surface kind of way. Commands. So if we're coming from a place of telling somebody what to do, it can be perceived as I'm right, you're wrong. I'm competent and capable, you're not. Same with unsolicited advice. If you have a mother-in-law, you understand this. When people are giving you unsolicited advice, it's easy to get defensive because it's easy to be perceived as you're not doing it right, you're not doing enough, and I'm competent and capable and you're not. Shoulding on people implies you did it wrong. So shoulding as in, you should have done this or you should have done that. I post to Instagram about criticism, teaching people that criticism is relationally damaging. And in the examples that I give, inevitably people comment that I should have done this or I should have said that. So they're criticizing my videos on criticism. Gets me every time. There are just easier to hear ways to say this and or broach this conversation. Like with curiosity, like, dang, that sucks. What do you wish you would have done differently? Also, before shoulding or offering advice, I am very sure to quantify the conversation. Are you looking for solutions or to just be heard? Because if you don't know what people want and you start offering them things, my mentor used to say, when you give unsolicited advice, you become the problem. I mean, there's not a truer thing that's been said. Teaching a lesson, also known as beating a dead horse. I so did not know how to get what I needed in relationships that I unconsciously believed that teaching people lessons about how they did it wrong or how they were wrong and bad was the way to get, if I just berated them enough, then they would give me what I needed. But actually, it pinched me off from the things that I needed. Teaching people lessons about how they're doing it wrong doesn't make them want to be close to you. They usually shut down. I would leave conversations not feeling deeply seen or heard and understood, and I would keep going and going and going, beating that dead horse, not knowing that the way that I was coming at this was actually pinching me off from the thing that I needed to feel deeply seen and heard and understood about it. Toxic positivity. I have a super brief post that I did years ago on toxic positivity that I just think sums it up. Toxic positivity confuses a lot of people, but it is, but not limited to, you're fine, she's in a better place, don't worry about it, get over it, everything happens for a reason, it could be worse, and drum roll, please. But you have so much to be grateful for. Basically, anything that communicates you shouldn't be feeling the way you're feeling, candy-coated in positivity. For me, it's worse than straight up criticism of my feelings like you are being ridiculous because it's served with a mindfuck, for lack of a less offensive term. So earlier this year, I found out, this is TMI, I am in super early menopause. And I was very angry about it because I felt like I was telling my doctors that something was going on for the last 6 years. I even said, it seems like I am in perimenopause when I was 36 and nobody listened to me. So anyway, I was kind of angry when the testing came back. And I felt like I needed to gather about it. And so I called upon some people that I knew who had either complained about a hot flash in front of me or were of a certain age, but also a qualifier was I had to know that they wouldn't toxic positivity me in this situation, which so many of my friends did. If they watch this, they're going to be like, oh crap, I did that. Saying things like, oh, you're so lucky. You don't have your period anymore. If you're not there yet, I would take my period. I would. Over not having enough estrogen in my body. I would take it. So it's criticism though. You shouldn't be feeling the way that you're feeling. Okay? Defensiveness. Here are all the things that can be defensiveness, which there's a little overlap between defensiveness and criticism. Little Venn diagram, there's some overlap there. Counterattacking is when you attack the other person in response to their criticism. So you criticize their criticism. I have people come in who learn this stuff and then they weaponize it. They go home, they get criticized by their 16-year-old. I just did this video online. They get criticized by somebody in their life like, oh, there's never any food around here. I could meet that with criticizing her criticism. That's criticism. Like, no, if you do that, you're still on this track of the attack defense cycle. You're not off of it. Our goal is to get off of it so you can get to resolutions and emotional intimacy. Shifting blame. This is when you try to make the other person responsible for the problem. Making excuses. This is when you try to justify your behavior or explain why you're not responsible for the problem. Sometimes I say to my husband, like, I don't need an excuse. I just need a solution. I don't need an excuse. I just need an apology. Denying responsibility. This is when you refuse to acknowledge that you've played a role in the problem. Playing the victim. My favorite version of this. Sarcasm. I guess it's always my fault. I never do anything right. That's like it's a conversational dead end. Shutting down and or placating. Some of us easily shut down in what feels like an uncomfortable interaction or appease or do whatever we have to do to make the perceived criticism or the attack stop. We'll discuss why that is, neurologically speaking. It all makes sense. But here's the thing that most people don't know about tough interactions. When we know how to get through conflict well, it actually increases emotional intimacy. Doing conflict well is refusing the invitation to the attack defense cycle and getting to those win-win resolutions and increased emotional intimacy. So it's not tough conversations that create relationship demise. It's not knowing how to do them well. And it's a skill that just a lot of people don't have. So essentially, every not so great interaction in relationship starts with perceived criticism and defensiveness, a two-person, two-part combo. If you are involved in interactions that get stuck, you are playing a part. If you change your part, the interaction changes. Okay, and bonus points if you know what this clip is from. I used to call it communication quicksand. Like the more you talk, the more you just keep sinking, right? Princess Bride. I love this movie so much. I used to watch it when I was sick all the time. Okay. So the goal in interactions is to get from this top little marker, anger, frustration, and irritation, all the way to a resolution, right? Without the detour into criticism, defensiveness, and shutdown. I tell my couples, I want them getting through tough interactions in 10 minutes or less. If it's lasting longer than that, it is likely that you are in the attack defense cycle. Okay? If you are not getting to resolutions quickly, over and over again, it is likely that resentment is increasing in your relationships. I want resolution versus compromise. Most people's definition of compromise is not my definition of compromise. Compromise, to most people, I think, means I'm going to do something dreadful this time and you're going to do something dreadful next time. But the bigness of what one person is giving up versus the bigness of what another person is giving up is so relative and impossible to compare that it sets relationships up for failure. I would rather you be reaching for win-win resolutions. Here's an example. When I taught graduate school, I was teaching 2 nights a week, and this is around the time we had a 5, 3, and 0-year-old. And I would get home, taught at night, so from like 5 to 9:30, and I would get home and my husband, toughest time of day with kids that age, my husband would look shell-shocked, like he had been through war. And my friend Amanda told me at that time that she was moving to Nashville from St. Louis and wanted to go out to dinner with me. And I was like, yes, of course. And so I said to my husband, like, hey, Amanda's moving. She wants to do dinner with me, but that's going to mean another night alone with the kids for you. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I said, okay, I hear you saying it's fine, but it doesn't sound fine. What would make it better? Now, his answer is the correct answer, right? It's the right answer. It's what a good person would say. However, I know that I don't want fine in my relationships. I want a win-win. And that felt like I was winning and he was losing. And so I looked at him and I said, what would make it better? And he said, no, it's fine. It's fine. She's your best friend. Yeah, it's fine. And I said, no, I know it's fine, but what would make it better? And he was like, it's fine. She's your best friend. She's moving. You have to go to dinner with her. I said, he was getting frustrated with me. And I said, but okay, if you had a happy hour, if you knew you had a happy hour with Matt and Neil, your buddies, his buddies, on Friday, would that make it feel better? And the relief that came over his body, he like put his hand on his chest and he was like, oh God, that does make it feel better. And so I reached for that win-win resolution and we got there. So that's what I mean by win-win resolutions. I want people kind of proactively collaborating on what is a way to move forward with the least amount of room for resentment, which I know slowly erodes relationships over long periods of time. So I want people checking out in terms of the attack-defense cycle, perceived criticism, and defensiveness. I want people checking out the perceived criticism and defensiveness instead of reacting to it. This is one way to manage our defensiveness, and it is also a magic wand for how to de-escalate an already defensive person when you feel misperceived or they've perceived criticism and you're getting met with defensiveness, but you didn't mean it. I know. This is where people get totally lost, and I have an example that's going to make it all super clear. But what I want people doing is I want them postponing persuasion until you can paraphrase your partner's perspective to their liking. I call it the PPPPP. This gets you off of that detour and back on track to a resolution. Okay? So, story time. When we had 2 young kids, I mean, our second was an infant, and we were trying really hard to do regular date nights. But we would find ourselves on these date nights, and we would be talking about if the baby slept, if the baby pooped, how much the baby slept, and how much the baby pooped. And we weren't really getting much meaningful connection out of these date nights. And it really didn't feel worth paying a babysitter for. And so I, was just thinking of like Cosmo-like questions that I could ask to get us talking about something, anything else. And I looked at my husband and I said, okay, bucket list of places. Where do you want to go before you die? And he said, I don't know. And I was like, no, like anywhere, like you can go anywhere. Where would you go before you die? And he said, I don't know. Sensed some defensiveness, irritation, frustration, was like, okay. Was also working on not taking things personally. And I thought, maybe he had a stressful day at work. Maybe he can't remember places in the world that he might want to go to. And so I was like, well, I'll just jog his memory and I'll say, some of the places that I want to go to. I said, well, okay, I would go to Greece and Italy and Spain and Hawaii. Where would you want to go? And he boomed back, I don't know. That date, I let it go. I thought, oof, who knows what's going on over there? Didn't quite know how to figure it out. Then at our next date night, I tried the same thing. I thought, okay, this time it's gonna work. We're gonna have a good conversation about places that we could go when we have a lot of money. And got the same super defensive, booming, I don't know. Now, I thought about it for a minute. I thought, how could he possibly be perceiving this as criticism? Because I know the recipe. Perceived criticism, defensiveness. I'm getting met with defensiveness. That means he has perceived criticism. That gives me a clue about where my next step could be to get us to a resolution. So I'd think, and now this postponed persuasion, so you can paraphrase your partner's perspective to their liking. Now he's just saying, I don't know, there's not much to paraphrase there. Paraphrases are summarizing what somebody is saying, thinking, or feeling. The beautiful thing about them is that if you do them with a question mark, they don't have to be right to make the conversation be more clear. You can get it totally wrong, and it still forces the other person into more clarity. So I just took what I felt like was a wild stab in the dark about what my husband might be thinking or feeling. And I said, do you think that I'm saying that it's your job to get me to these places, and because you haven't, you are somehow failing? Now, I know about my husband that what tends to be a trigger for him is feeling like he's failing or not doing enough or doing it right. For me, it's not feeling important or like I matter or like I'm being prioritized. Our triggers are a little bit different. Our destructive core beliefs are a little bit different. So that also gave me a clue. Like, how is this about him somehow failing? So I said, do you think that I'm saying that it's your job to get me to these places, and because you haven't, you are somehow failing? And he said, yes, of course that's what you're saying. And this is what I mean when I say, as a communication expert, I do not expect communication to go well on the first try. There is too much, so much going on underneath the surface, underneath the words of what we're communicating, that it is almost impossible to have clear communication on the first try with just words. And when I'm in session with a heterosexual couple and I tell this story, inevitably, the female is super confused about why my husband is being so defensive on our date night with this very innocent question. And the man is like, that's what I thought you meant. We are socialized to be very different in terms of gender. And while that socialization is very insidious and invisible, if we lost our house today, who would be more judged, my husband or myself? We both work, but who would be more judged? If our house is disgusting and filthy and dirty and our children are disgusting and filthy and dirty, who would be more judged? Me or my husband? So, yes, for some reason, he was interpreting that I was expecting for him to provide me these experiences. And I looked at him and I said, Eric, I work and my happiness is my job. If I want to get to these places, it is my job to get me there. And I guess I said it because I postponed persuasion until I paraphrased his perspective. So when I got that, yes, that's exactly what you're saying, that meant that I got it to his liking. Now I can persuade. So timing is important when it comes to persuading or explaining your perspective. And you have probably gotten into conversations where you were like, I didn't mean that. And I'm guessing that that didn't work because there was a step missing. You didn't paraphrase your partner's perspective to their liking first, okay? Now, there's so much going on in our brain that is not helpful in terms of close relationships and getting through conflict. And that is because our brains are wired for survival. And that has to do with our fight or flight response. The amygdalas in our brain, tiny little almond-shaped centers above our ears, will flare on an fMRI when we perceive danger. Now, in interactions that aren't going super well with people that we love the most, our brains can perceive that as danger. Now, this is not a saber-toothed tiger. We are not going to die. So the fight or flight response isn't super helpful here. But when our fight or flight response is triggered, our brain literally cannot access the parts of our brain responsible for cognition and behavior, so where learned skills live. So the parts of our brain that we need to get through conflict and interaction well, when that fight or flight response is triggered, is literally hijacked. It's why we do and say things in heated disagreements that we don't necessarily mean. And we know when we're calm, don't behoove us in relationships or to say in an argument. So when that fight or flight response is turned on, you see the light switch here, the parts of our brain where learned skills live is literally turned off. Sucks, doesn't it? So what you want is you want to be calm, in a state of calm, so that you can access your learned skills. There's a quote here. You don't need to resolve this conflict to feel better. That's what I used to think. We have to hammer this out so that I can feel better. You don't need to resolve this conflict to feel better. You need to feel better to resolve this conflict. And by the way, I was hammering it out in a way that was likely relationally damaging. You don't need to resolve this conflict to feel better. You need to feel better to resolve this conflict. This is why I encourage couples to proactively create a timeout plan until you can get really efficient at moving through this path of getting to anger, frustration, and irritation to a resolution without the relationally damaging stuff in between. Criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, all that stuff. So creating a timeout plan where you're taking a break, where you are separating with the intent of, nothing nice is gonna come out of my mouth right now, so I need to walk away. Inevitably, people ask me, how long do we do this for? And neuroscience says we all have these things on, a lot of us. And if your beats per minute are over 100, it's probably not a good time for you to be interacting in a heated discussion with a loved one. Okay? This is not about avoidance. The timeout plan is not about avoidance. If you take a timeout, it is with the intent to come back together. And people will disagree about like, well, I always bring us back together and you never bring it back up. If you want it resolved, you can initiate the conversation. Are you ready to talk now? Okay? Here's a story about that. I was in graduate school when I learned all this stuff. I remember being in the top floor of our little duplex and Eric and I getting in a huge fight, and I was MFing him. I had a sharp tongue. MFing him up the left side, down the right side. Stuff was flying out of my mouth that was not okay. But I had like the learned skill parts of my brain. I couldn't access it, but I could like hear it, but I couldn't use it. And I remembered, I thought, oh, this is that stuff that I'm not supposed to be engaged in. This is when I'm supposed to time out. And so I turned on a dime and my feet started walking out the door, but my mouth kept name calling, MFing. Some people don't know what that is. It's bad. MF, just put it together. MFing him. And I got out of the house and into my car and I thought, okay, I have to go away until I'm calm. I'm going to need a hotel. Like, I might need a hotel for 2 nights because there is no way that I'm going to be calm today. Now, what the research says is that most people calm down within about 20 minutes. That's the average. And some people are longer calmer downers and some people are shorter calmer downers. I drove myself to Michael's, the crafty store. I'm not even a crafty person. I'm not sure why I took myself there, and walked around the aisles and looked at crafty things I would never purchase or participate in. And sure enough, in about 20 minutes, that fight or flight response had resolved. I was calm and I drove home. And I looked at Eric and I said, are you ready to talk about this? And he said, nope. That was one of the hardest things for me to honor, when somebody wasn't ready to talk about it. But I want you to think of this like gears of a car. You cannot go forward if you are in reverse. You can't. And if somebody is telling you they're not ready to talk about it, They are literally they're in reverse. They're telling you they're in reverse, and you are expecting the conversation to go forward. I used to tell my kids when they were little, if one of them was really upset, the other one would try to go into their room and make it I was like, do not go into that lion's den. If you go into that lion's den, you are going to get eaten. I'm not saying eating other people or acting out on other people in anger is okay, but if somebody is telling you that they're too angry to interact, listen to them. Revisit it. You can come back. Okay. So we already did that. Before we move forward into the conflict map, I want to let you know that this is just the beginning. Thank you for attending this free communication workshop. I hope you have learned so many valuable skills that you can use moving forward. I hope you're thinking about conflict a little bit differently, right? I hope your little light bulbs are going off about things that you do or that your partner does that might trigger you. But if you want to take all of this to the next level, I have a little mini course that's not so mini, and I keep adding to it. It's called Learn How to Fight. And it is jam-packed with so many things that I want you to check it out. So if you're watching this and you signed up to watch, we'll send you some information to check it out. So any workshop that I do over the next few months is included in that. And I'm doing workshops on sex drive and quality time and date nights and all kinds of stuff. So also within that training is the conflict map training. And you'll see at the top here with the conflicts, you start with anger, frustration, irritation. And you have choices here. You can either sweep it under the rug, placate, tell people what they want to hear to get it over with, or have a big interaction, don't get to a resolution, and just move on. That's sweep it under the rug. You can see if you sweep, the line goes like over and around back to conflict. That's because the more you're sweeping under that rug, the more that's under your rug, the quicker and quicker you are getting to conflicts, because now we have poop-colored lenses where rose-colored lenses used to be. We can choose to dominate, come to that interaction from a place of, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm smart, you're stupid, I'm sane, you're crazy. If you get to that point, that's a good time to see the right arrow, take a timeout. Or you can, bottom option, work to resolve, work to get to a resolution. Now, when we're in timeouts, I want people getting to, because underneath all hard emotions, underneath all anger, frustration, irritation, underneath all criticism is a want, a need, a hurt, or a fear. Wants, needs, hurts, and fears are very easy to hear, but very hard to say, because they require some degree of vulnerability that criticism and blame just doesn't. Remember, criticism and blame, if that fight or flight response is triggered, we are armored. Vulnerability isn't happening because we're trying to keep ourselves safe. So blame and criticism are very easy in those moments. Communicating about hurts, fears, wants, and needs is very hard. So I'm asking you to do something. It will feel very counterintuitive. If you've been getting stuck, that means you have habitual patterns of interaction. What feels normal and sensical to you isn't working. And I'm asking you to do something that feels not normal, not comfy, and nonsensical. Like, get vulnerable, because this is not a saber-toothed tiger. So fight or flight response isn't helpful here. We want to get to those vulnerable things, and those are really easy to hear and are the next step. So for now, in your timeouts, I just want you trying to get to those things, trying to fill out those boxes. And if you can communicate about any or all of those, that's awesome. That's great. And it will most likely de-escalate the interaction and get you closer to those resolutions. So there's lots more examples of that in the training, and we go through the whole conflict map. The top half is the most important half. So I hope you'll join me on the other side, though. I'm so excited to have had you here. Like I said, if you've had questions, you need anything, please, please, please let us know. Also, please remember, this is not just a theory. This is exactly what I did in the Learn How Not to Fight course. Or Learn How Not to Fight. It's not Learn How Not to. It's Learn How to Fight. I can't get the names of my own things right. The name's not important. But this is exactly what I did to turn it around for myself, big time. It's taken me decades to gather this info. I live it day in and day out so that I can deliver it in ways that are applicable, real life, relatable ways, not just ideas or how-tos. These are exactly the same principles whether you don't want to get off track or just a little bit off track or are really off track. I use these principles and method to help thousands of couples and mother-daughters and whole families and so many relationships. Nothing has made me feel more free, more confident, and more sure of my relationships than what I show you in the Learn How to Fight course. So this is super sweet note I got from somebody. I just wanted to touch base with you and say thanks. I really use the tools you have given me, and it's like a miracle. People in my life, my partner and my oldest son the most, but everyone really have changed the way they are to me, and it's pretty awesome because this is about teaching people how to treat you. I just wanted to give you props on your ability to help me get my happy back. You're really in my everyday thoughts. I was skeptical at first, but I decided to give this course a try. I'm so glad I did. It helped me understand why I was always avoiding conflict with my boss and how to speak up for myself without being rude or defensive. It made a huge difference in my confidence and performance at work. I learned so much from this course. It has taught me how to express my emotions and needs in a clear and respectful way, and how to listen to my partner without judging or interrupting. It also gave me some practical tools to calm down when I feel angry or hurt. Our conflicts are much shorter and less painful now, and we always find a way to resolve them. This is about a big thing that you really want to feel, and that's you want to feel free. You also want to leave an amazing legacy for your children, like I do. You want to stop lying awake at night, worrying. You're done putting on a show. You're tired of feeling like you're not enough, like you don't matter. You're tired of winging it and getting mediocre results, and you would love a system that could get you real results. I try to be so strategic in the order in which I deliver things, and I create things like that conflict map to make it absolutely clear. So I have scoured, researched, and paid for many degrees, and what I have found has utterly changed my life. You can do it too. If I can do it, anybody can. My 16-year-old does it. My 14-year-old does it. If they can do it, you can do it. It's a process. Anyone can apply it. In a short period of time, you can start getting big results. Nothing has made me feel more free, confident, and sure of my relationships than this. How do I apply this process in my own relationships in life when I don't have time for one more frapping thing? You might be thinking that. You can do it slow, using trial and error, and some of what I've taught you today. Or I can give you wheels, and we can do it quickly using my full 3-week online communication course. The Learn How to Fight course is a comprehensive course that was designed for busy couples when they need it most. Years ago, I got tired of seeing a well-known phenomenon play out in my practice, which is that people tend not to get help until it's too late, until the shit has hit the fan, until there has been a betrayal or a crisis. And I find that the barrier between most people getting what they need and staying really consistent and committed is time. It's designed to allow you to do the work in a way that's consistent, committed, and flexible. It's designed to give couples and not couples every little thing they need to get relationships back on track again and again and again. Remember, this stuff is applicable whether you're at work, with your kids, extended family, or people you love the most. It is a fast, comprehensive, and flexible way for you to go from meh relationships to getting your best friend back. It's the most transformational pieces of my work in one program. No commuting, no babysitters. I'm offering this program for you. Yeah, you, the frazzled one in the pajama pants. People who make big and consistent commitment to work with me long-term get the biggest results. For couples, this would be sessions together and individually for 3 to 6 months or more. Factor in kids, jobs, school, sports, workouts. The barrier for many getting the results that they want is time. The bottom line is, I just got tired of seeing couples not getting the results they wanted because of time. Couples with little kids. And so I created these comprehensive programs for super busy people who want better and more meaningful, more connected relationships. But big transformation doesn't mean you have to throw a wrench in the entire rest of your life. Big change doesn't have to take a lot of time. So if you are ready to create something really different for yourself in terms of your relationships, I really think you should join me in the How to Fight course. Learning how to fight is the #1 skill for healthy relationships. Research has proven it over and over again. And we're doing it. We're doing it over there. So How to Fight, it's $147. I think it's a total steal. It's less than one session with me, 1 hour. And it's many hours, many, many hours of content. So be sure to check out the details at micahross.com/howtofight. That's it, I think. Have a good day, morning, night, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. You deserve happy relationships. Your kids deserve for you to have happy relationships. Thank you so much. Bye.